I've been elected by the American people to restore common sense to Washington and indeed to the world. And I believe strongly that it's in the best interest of the United States, the best interest in Europe, the best interest of Ukraine, and indeed the best interest of Russia to stop the killing now and bring the world to peace. My administration is making a decisive break with the foreign policy failures of the past administration and, frankly, the past. I ran against a very foolish foreign policy establishment, and their recklessness has led to the death of many, many people. Under our administration, we're forging a new path that promotes peace around the world.
That's what we're trying to get, Donald Trump. Peace around the world. Today is the 3-year anniversary of Ukraine. So I went on X today and asked, with this photo that Matthew and I were actually, that's my photo from this weekend in D.C. with the pro-Ukraine protest that we saw. So what deal should Trump make to end the war now? And here are some of the best responses. Jim Bicknell says the only deal is no more money and we get your resources. We deserve something for the billions of dollars that we sent you. Well, I'm in agreement, but I think Zelenskyy is like, hey, this wasn't a loan. You guys just sent the money over here, is what he's trying to say right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jim is spouting something called common sense, the same thing that Trump is talking about. This is the way that normal people and I think statesmen ought to think about this. No more money, and we get something in return. But what happens is, there are people who get something in return, right? Let's make no mistake. There's lots of people in America, particularly in the zip codes outside of Washington, D.C., who are making lots of money off of all of this. So, you know, this is a real turning point for American foreign policy. And what happens here is going to light the way, right, for a new American foreign policy in the 21st century.
The people in those zip codes outside of D.C. are probably friends with the woman that you sat next to on your flight that was very upset that all of this funding for several projects was about to come to an end.
Well, yeah, I think that the line among the political class, people like that right now, is that, no, we don't need smaller government. We need bigger government because the GAO says so. And, we're understaffed and this is all inefficient because government. I could go on and on. They're melting down. They are melting down because this kind of common sense is not the way that they're used to playing the game.
We'll take the liberal tears. It's fine. Harrison Swigard says the U.S. must have all of Ukraine's rare earth minerals for the billions of dollars that we've lost over there. They must never be a member of NATO, and they must allow an in-depth investigation into the corruption within Ukraine. There are a lot of different points here. I would love to see an investigation into the corruption into Ukraine. That might take quite some time to unravel that. Once you start pulling that string, I don't know how far that one will go.
Well, I mean, the last time a president tried to look into the corruption, Congress tried to impeach him.
Correct.
Because he was trying to look into the corruption of, Hunter Biden. I mean, there is a ton here, and it would be great to use this as an example where you go after some egregious offenders and show the American people how this system works and how people in the United States make money off of foreign policy. It really is disgusting, and it has to end somehow. So, let's go. Let's do it.
John Kuntz rounds it out for us today. He says it's all been offered. Russia goes home, no NATO membership, the EU and UN can all have to chip in to help rebuild Ukraine. So yeah, I mean, they can help over in Europe too. The UN, go ahead, guys, jump in at any point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need to end this conflict. I mean, the United States definitely needs to end this conflict, but it would be great if after that they sort of pass it off to Europe so Europe grows up a little bit and becomes more mature when it comes to foreign policy instead of being like the spoiled child protected by the United States. And then, having these crazy ideas about how foreign policy should work when they're not even defending themselves. So you want to kind of like it's like a spoiled kid. Like you want to slowly give them more and more responsibilities. So that's what we need to do here. I agree with John.
What we get here with the media that has allowed this to happen for 3 years, where they just go on and say, oh, no, like things are fine. They aren't actually going to go through and report the truth and the facts of the matter. Right. We used to always see, I remember growing up on the nightly news, you would see images and videos of wars that were going on around the world. Well, no, you don't need to see that here. But when you comes to find the importance of a free press and the media doing their jobs. I think that you go through and you look at it and you know that this is what it takes to get this country back.
Yeah, this is a really, really important point. It's one that a lot of people have been hitting on lately. I was thinking of this because I was talking to a young journalist today who's giving a talk or a presentation on the media and the First Amendment. And here's the thing to realize. First off, the media has never been objective. It never will be objective. The idea of objectivity that we have about the media was always basically a lie or kind of fiction. During the time of the founding, the media was far from objective. The media was paid for, in many cases, newspapers were paid for directly by political parties. It was so messy, you can't even believe it. You won't believe the stories. For instance, Sally Hemings, right, is a slave we know related to the Jeffersons, right? Thomas Jefferson or a relative, right, ended up impregnating a slave, right? We know this is true. This is still a story now that's taught in schools. You know how we know it's true? We know this story because Thomas Jefferson paid a man named Callender to attack his opponent, John Adams. And he attacked Adams brutally with a bunch of, fallacious lies and garbage in the press at the time. And most of it was not true at all. And then the Alien Sedition Acts pass, and this guy ends up going to prison. He's an enemy of Adams. This act is probably not in line with the First Amendment, and it's quickly overturned later. But he's thrown in jail basically by his political opposition. He gets out of jail and he goes to Jefferson and says, "I need you to help me pay the fine because I basically did time for you. I'm your propagandist." And Jefferson doesn't fully pay him back. The guy he's paying to basically do dirty journalism. And that guy gets angry and he turns on Jefferson and he starts publishing rumors about Thomas Jefferson's personal life. And that's where the Sally Hemings story comes from. In other words, these were all men who did great things. They were also used to the dirtiness of politics and the dirtiness of journalism in ways you can't even imagine. And yet they supported the First Amendment and saw it as important. Why? Not because there's such a thing as an objective journalism, but because if government is not monopolizing information, let 1,000 flowers bloom. And in the midst of that messiness and muck, if everyone fights it out, they believed that the result would ultimately be good. They knew it would be messy. So take the good side of media at the founding. All of these guys were anons, to use the parlance of our times, talking about X or Twitter. They had anonymous accounts that they used all the time. They had so many alternative anonymous accounts, so many alts. We don't even know sometimes when some of the most famous founders were writing or not. Like, we don't know if Alexander Hamilton may have written this under this pseudonym and so may have written this under this pseudonym. We don't even know who they are. They were all speaking behind the curtain to each other in the public prints, arguing over what should be done politically. Right after the Constitution passes, James Madison, a few years later, James Madison and Alexander Hamilton are arguing about what kind of powers the presidency should have during the Washington administration under anonymous accounts in the public prints. That's the sort of thing that ultimately is what you have to keep free, right? That argument back and forth, a serious argument, an open-ended argument that's not resolved. This is what's scary about Republican form of government and freedom. You don't know how it's going to go. But they had faith that if you kept it free, if you kept the monopoly of government the hell away from it, that ultimately the good guys would win. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what disappeared for a while in America. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why the notion of objectivity is so dangerous. You think with 3 networks and PBS back in the day that journalists was professional and objective. It never was. It never will be. But what will always be true is that the only way a Republican form of government can survive is if the government stays the hell away and allows people to argue amongst themselves.
Having just left the swamp ourselves, we were there to see it firsthand and to take shape. I will say that we left with actually some renewed sense of confidence that we might actually be able to turn this country around. Yeah. There are people in place that are building good things, and they do want to come through. And there are people in the administration now that want to shine a light on all of the darkness, all of the corruption that is happening. So yes, they need to do it with the media, but also the people that are going to be taking over in Washington, D.C. It is a completely different vibe than what we've seen there before. And you need to make sure that you can just kind of bottle this up and keep people on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, well, let's give the people a little bit more because they deserve it out there. I mean, there's two sides to the 2 days, like in 2 days that we were there.
3 days.
Well, I mean, there's two sides that I'm talking about right now.
All right, okay, for the analogy.
2 of the 3
2
days. One day we go to the executive branch. One day we go to the executive branch of the White House and EOB, and we're wandering around, and you just see like all these people, like many people that I know from Claremont, et cetera. Just so many friends, so many good people, so much love. They're all marching in the same direction, and they're everywhere. And the Avengers are still assembling. It's not over yet, right? The Avengers are still assembling. They're not even fully staffed. Okay, so the people in the government, like everywhere you go, there are incredible people around every corner, and they're all still assembling. You haven't even seen the beginning of the winning from the administration. No. And then the next day, we end up at a party with a bunch of people outside yelling, "F you fascists," which I found thrilling. I mean, it's just straight into my veins. It was wonderful. The cops kept them away, and they were yelling and protesting. And inside were a lot of younger people, for the most part, representing this new coalition and celebrating in a cultural moment that was astounding. So it's both the culture, right? It's a new political class, and the actual leadership in office.
Yeah, I was the only one who realized that we were by far the oldest people there. And he said, "Oh, I had no idea. I could not. I am one of these people here."
I still don't really believe it. I'm just saying it because you said it. And
it's okay.
It makes the story better.
It does. But there is so much that we accomplished there in D.C. Over the weekend. I am very excited to see where all of this goes. But I look at it and I think, okay, I know. My brain knows it's the swamp. Mm. Can we actually overcome this? That's the question at hand. That's the mandate.
Yep. That we're going to find out. But right now, it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
The winning will continue.